Hey, everybody, welcome back to Too Many Men. I am Allison Lucan, and as always, I am joined by the nationally respected and educating our youth, Sarah Sivian. Sarah, how are you? Tell the people where you are and what you're doing today.
I am at Penn State University. I'm with Emily Kaplan, and we both went there, obviously, and we're kind of spending the day talking to the youth about what it's like to cover hockey and the NHL after graduation. And it's been awesome. I'm so grateful for this opportunity. I haven't been back since I dropped out, so this is fun.
Well, they couldn't learn from anyone better than the two of you. And if you haven't already, Sarah's Style Rankings, the latest edition, the original, the undefeated Style Rankings are out week 3 or episode 3, I guess I should say. Make sure you read those, check them out. We love that. I hear there might be another TV appearance coming up for Style Rankings somewhere. We'll
They
tease that
might,
and we'll let it go.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
excited.
Well, of course, we would not be Too Many Men if we didn't have the nationally focused, locally brilliant, and ever kind Shayna Goldman. Shayna, say hi.
Hi. You guys crushed
Hi.
it on what did it release Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, it was excellent. I listened to it for the first time, not on mute. First time ever. The 2 minute man has actually gone through my speakers and I was so hyped and I was laughing and taking notes along the way, like I have to clip this. It was so good.
Thank you.
You had one point of feedback for us though, and you share this later in the episode as well, but you had one point of feedback. What were you disappointed in, Shayna?
You guys barely fucking cursed.
I thought I held down the fort.
You know what I respected when you guys were doing the fuck, marry, kill and you were talking about Bennington. When you went off him, I was just like, yes. Like there we go. He's like the running joke now here. Like Rich comes in from a hockey game. I think I told you guys this. He came in and he was like sour grapes. I'm like, wow, the big loser energy. He's like, don't call me Jordan Bennington. And now his friends and me are all like taunting him if he has a bad game. Like, don't do it. Don't be him.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, as we have told you all from time to time, we're going to be bringing you special guests. And this week we're doing that again. We are going to be joined by Lisa Dillman, and she is just an incredible person. I talk a little bit more about what she has meant to me and all that she does when we kick off this interview. But before we go straight to that, Sarah, just share what Lisa has meant to you and just how important she's been to this industry, not just in hockey, but in sports in general.
Yeah, not only is she a trailblazer in many ways, and she covers a lot of sports and always has, but I think she's just it's hard. Me and Emily were talking about this to the youth today too. It's like, it's hard as a woman in sports getting into the industry because people are all, even if they don't even mean to be, like, especially women, we compete with each other, right? And it's like, there's only so many spaces. So some people might not be the warmest, but she's like a warm, friendly smile always while being absolutely kick-ass at her job. And she's done so many different things and she just takes them all like a champ. So she's just somebody to look up to for sure.
Amazing. Shayna, what was your favorite part of the interview and just describe how you see Lisa and what she's meant to all of us?
Yeah, Lisa's like, it's such a well-known name and well-respected name in the industry. And like for every single reason, you know, she's brilliant, she's creative, she's done it all, and she's so helpful for all of us. She's also one of the nicest people around, which like is also like so nice because sometimes it does feel like people get so competitive where women are like pinned against each other because it's like, well, we can only have one friend that's a woman in hockey because, you know, we don't have the time of day. And, you know, she's just always like gracious with her time and everything. And, you know, so much fun to work with too. So with the interview, I just liked hearing her take on where hockey is today about like player personalities and, you know, learning more about this Ducks team because we do have East Coast bias. So I'm glad like we get to emphasize the West a little bit more. And like, I love that you're out West too, because I know you're someone who like, you get up at like the ass crack of dawn, so you don't stay up super late. And now it's like, well, it's normal time for you. It's perfect.
It is perfect. It is perfect. I'm still getting up at the ass crack of dawn and it's
I don't know why. You're like getting up when I'm
are.
getting up and you're 3 hours delayed. I don't fucking get it.
Well, friends, without further ado, we will be back next Tuesday with a whole hockey-filled podcast. But we're going to talk some hockey here too with our very good friend and esteemed colleague, Lisa Dillman. Check it out. All right, my friends. Well, as promised, we are just beyond thrilled to welcome to Too Many Men an industry legend, someone who's been a mentor and a role model, I know, to me, if not to all three of us. We are just so excited that Lisa Dillman is here with us. She has written for NHL.com. She's written for The Athletic. She's written for the LA Times. She's currently writing about the Anaheim Ducks and the NHL for the Orange County Register. She's covered Stanley Cups. She covered tennis. She does it all. She's a wizard. She's a genius. I need to stop talking so we hear from her. Lisa, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for that fabulous introduction. Unfortunately, I can't get my camera to work, so you can't see me blushing here, but I did want to point something out. Since Sarah is at Penn State, I looked into the archives. I covered one Penn State football game in 1998.
Oh my God, which one was it?
Citrus Bowl.
Okay, that's fun. What ended up happening?
It didn't go so well. But I wrote about Joe Paterno and Steve Spurrier and their unlikely friendship. And oh my God, it's like, wow, I can't even remember writing this.
You have truly done it all.
That's the only Penn State football game I've ever covered. So I guess I can just stop right there. Otherwise, that's probably enough for my one afternoon in Orlando. Do any of you even remember that game?
No,
I do. I do.
You definitely do. Your husband went to.
My husband definitely does. I'm sure he could give us a recount of everything.
Wow.
He's a Penn State alum as well, and diehard Penn State fan, but now we've already given Penn State way too much airtime on this hockey podcast. As we do. Lisa, you've covered this sport in every which way and for significant amounts of time in a couple different teams. Just share with us, what are you interested in, what's happening in the league overall right now? What's changing? What's evolving in the game of hockey that you see?
Well, first I'll talk a little bit about the off-ice issues and what I'm seeing happening with players, maybe because I read Sarah's story this morning and was thrilled to see Max Jones rocketing up the charts with his his I don't even know what to call it, but
his swagger,
his look. And but I think one of the things that's been very frustrating all these years is knowing that these players have personality and it's been lurking there underneath the surface and they just need the chance to show it. I don't know what it is, but the NHL, much more than any other sport, is always, for better or worse, been about the team. Nobody wants to put themselves about the team, but that has sort of led to a little bit of suppression of personality that is there. And one of the very, very frustrating things during the pandemic was that lack of interaction, that one-on-one time where you got to know these guys. And that's what, let's face it, that's what we want to do. We want to bring these guys to life. The more people know about them, they can embrace their personalities.
What are the guys on the Ducks like? I know that's a new team for you.
Fantastic for a team that is struggling and they have yet to win a game in regulation. So that's kind of where they're at. They're like the kings of overtime, 3-0 in overtime. But it's probably the best room I've covered in years. I was almost going to say decades, but sometimes when something's new that's at the forefront, you think it's the best and whatnot. But when you start with Trevor Zegras and you go from there, that's just such a terrific head start. It's a fantastic room. Kevin Shattenkirk is a professional, just gets it. Some of the younger players, I'm like their mom's age. So, but they're all completely cool with that. Jamie Drysdale, who had shoulder surgery, I went to a function where somebody thrust a baby into his hands, and I said, "Hey, is it okay if I take your picture?" He's, "Sure, go ahead." So they're natural. The Ducks organization's always been an organization with big personalities. Going back to Teemu Selanne, who I just saw at the Hall of Fame ceremonies over the weekend, and it's just gone from there. Chris Pronger. So they've kind of got it more than most teams, and they have it can sound like I'm currying favor, but they have a fantastic PR staff, and Sarah knows Steve Brown.
Yeah, great stuff.
So what do you think it is about the Ducks? Like, I think from an outsider's perspective, we get to learn a lot about their personality, which we don't see from a lot of teams. Like, what is it that the Ducks are doing right? Or is it just that it's, this next wave of young players with strong personalities?
Yeah, I think they're a little bit allowed to show it more. When I covered the Kings, their former general manager, Dean Lombardi, who's sort of this mad scientist, he he didn't like, he was a little bit old school in the sense he didn't want the rookies to be overexposed. Like he didn't really want a lot of promotion of the younger players. And thankfully Drew Doughty slipped through that weird prism of strangeness and has been allowed to be himself. And I'm sure from time to time the organization's like, oh my God, what did he just say? What's he gonna do next? So they've been a little, the Kings, like that's the other team I've covered the most over. They've been a little more tight with their players, but I do see signs of that opening up. Unfortunately, Alex Turcotte has had just a horrible start to his career in terms of medical situations and concussion issues, and I thought he was like not quite like Zegras, but I thought he was like a mini Zegras. So I thought to myself, finally, hey, they're getting a big personality, and Quentin Byfield's a big personality as well.
A mini Zegras. I'm getting old.
Oh my God. Me too.
Lisa, when you look at a player like Zegras, there were a lot of people who kind of reacted that Sonny Milano didn't stay with Anaheim. And, when you look at a player like him, as this team is building, what has to be around him for this team to ultimately get back to a place where it's contending?
Yeah, the pieces are there. They're gradually being put in place. You just look at the decor. It's like a lot of guys that are being pushed into levels above really where they should be. You have a bunch of guys that like are 5 and 6 playing up the depth chart, and also they've been ravaged with injuries. But I do think that they had a pretty successful offseason. Ryan Strome, Frank Furtado, John Klingberg's finally sort of starting to find his form. But I think all it does is take a few extra supplemental pieces and keeping that core in place. And you could always play the what if game. Like I wasn't covering the team last season, but I always wonder what had happened if they'd managed to keep Hampus Lindholm on the fold. And I know Sarah's very happy he's in Boston, but
he's been incredible. The whole team has, but
dynamite.
He's really been one of the best, if not the best defenseman. So low key, like you wouldn't expect that.
Super low key, and the guy's a force. I mean, he's a strong kid, and you saw I covered him quite a bit in his early years in Anaheim, and they had this fantastic young decor with Josh Manson and Brandon Montour, so they had the pieces there. Made some moves that really did not work out, but I wonder where they would be if they had a Hampus Lindholm on the team.
What if? Speaking of early years, I kind of wanted to ask about yours and how you think, like, I'm always so interested in about, like, what was the locker room like for a woman back in your early years? How has it changed? Has it changed at all? Like, any stories about that?
Can we all gather around the fireplace and I'll tell stories about my typewriter?
That is the vibe.
I know, that's what I love about Sarah. So many things. I just love how you do like to hear those stories, because sometimes I run into people and they could give, like, okay, you said I can swear. They could give a shit. Like they're like, oh, get away. I don't want to hear any of these stories.
We want them all.
But, well, we used to, like, when I first started covering the Kings, Wayne Gretzky was on the team, and the team in the early days flew commercial. And sometimes I would be on the same flight. So you'd be traipsing through O'Hare and the guys would be there with and this is really going back, they'd be sitting there reading the newspaper. It's like, wow. Now you get on a plane and no one has a newspaper in their hands. But we were around these guys a lot. There were probably 2 or 3 of us that traveled with them on the road, and you guys know this, being on the road with the team just changes everything. They sort of see you, maybe not as part of the team, certainly not at all, but they see you around, and there's just that built-in recognition factor. The room has always been excellent. I mean, I think the players compared to a few other sports that I've covered, I've rarely had a situation where I felt uncomfortable over a long period of time. But the relationships were a little bit different. You could really get to know a player back in the day. Even back to 2007, I went out to lunch with Dustin Brown and sat and chatted with him for a couple hours. And I really can't see that happening now. Maybe with the Ducks, but probably not with the Kings.
So where do you think, since you've covered all different sports, we love tennis, there's baseball, there's soccer, hockey, like, where do you think the NHL is like ahead of the curve, from your perspective? And where do you think they fall short to the other leagues you've covered?
That's a really good question. I do think they fall short in terms of the NBA, definitely, because I did the Clippers for 3 seasons. And And some of the best viewing was watching the TNT show with Charles and company. And I got to meet him a couple times, and he's awesome. And you obviously you can't copy completely from what basketball does, but it seems like hockey is trying to get the studio panel a little bit, lighten up a little bit, and add different elements. And I think there's still, I think another problem is there's all this confusion about television. Like, how do we get to see the games? I was in Canada and I ran into all these people up there and people even in the industry saying, well, how do I get this? Like, I'm blacked out here. I can't get the Bally Sports app. I can't do this. I can't do that. What's Hulu? So that's where I think hockey is a little bit behind. I think hockey is probably ahead of some of the other sports in terms of the acceptance of analytics. It may not seem that way, but I think they're a lot further ahead than not like the other major professional sports, but I sort of see it creeping into other individual sports.
Gotcha. Lisa, it's funny, I'm owning my own bias, but now that I'm out in Pacific time, I notice how much this division in the NHL just doesn't truly get paid attention to, whether it's people that are asleep and we're just looking at scores and we're not really understanding what went on at the game. But do you think that, I think the East Coast bias is real, but what is your perspective on how that impacts the understanding and the appreciation for the teams that are all, quote unquote, all the way out here?
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. And you do have that benefit of having lived in different time zones. And then when I was in Toronto last weekend, and it's like start trying to stay awake for the end of the Kings game on the other night. So when I say Hampus Lindholm comes to like Boston, people are like, oh my God, this guy's a great player. Where's he been? Well, he's been out on the West Coast and playing when you've been sleeping away. So I think there is a constant fight that way, and we sort of do live through that especially when we travel and we're trying to stay up late and watch games too. So I think there's players that are criminally underrated. Like I think I would really like to take a poll and see what people think of Troy Terry, because once you start watching him, you're like, wow, this guy's even better than I thought he was.
Why is that?
Just the things he does, the small things he does, like he outmuscled Victor Hedman and he won a puck battle behind the net. The little things you see away from the camera. So there's that part of it being in the building as opposed to watching on television. And he's I wouldn't say he's the anti-Zegras because he's really open and analytical and thoughtful, but he's certainly not a larger than life personality. He's really intelligent, but he doesn't necessarily go for promoting himself too much.
Yeah, I remember when I was covering Penn State hockey, he was on Denver and he just made my life a living hell. Like I was allowed to be a fan of Penn State and covering the team because I was a student, and he just would score a hat trick every single time against that team. He ruined our playoff hopes. So I have seen him in his college days, and I'm glad it's progressed to the NHL. But at the same time, it's like you're with all these younger players now, and like we're so hard on them, I feel like, as the media, if they aren't good in their first year. I know Troy has had kind of like up and down. Like, have you watched these guys kind of progress as they're getting older?
Yeah, I have. And, you think he's been around a lot longer. You're thinking, okay, when's it going to happen? But the development curve is so different for all these players. And people are calling, Quentin Byfield. Well, okay, let's talk about Gabe Vilardi. People are calling him a bust, and look what he's done this year. And the guy had a serious back injury, and he went through the pandemic and up and down between the AHL. So it does take a long time, and fans and even certain sectors of the media demand instant results. I'm sorry, not everybody's Connor, not everybody's Austin. It's just not happening. And players of that status have sort of, I wouldn't say they've spoiled it for everybody, but they've raised the bar. So people are like, well, Quentin Byfield, how come he's not, doing this? How come he's not doing that? So the expectations are really outsized, I think.
So with the Ducks just playing the Red Wings, it's kind of interesting. Like we see two rebuilding teams. Where do you think the Ducks have gone right so far? And what do you think they still have to do to turn the next corner and like take those steps to get back to the playoff picture?
Well, I think they're going to have to figure out what to do with John Gibson. And then, I keep going back to Pittsburgh. But what do they do with him? And in terms of, he's saying all the right things. Sometimes his body language is a little, you kind of wonder about that. And of course, if I was facing a gazillion shots every night, I wouldn't be too thrilled either. So I think they're going to have to kind of sort that out and see what he wants long term. How long will he be on board with the rebuild? Because let's face it, these rebuilds, people demand it, but then when they actually go through it, there's a certain level of impatience. And even like with Detroit has shown signs of taking major steps forward, but then they have a game like last night. So I don't know if the reaction was there this morning, but it's not an upward curve. So sometimes these things take a lot longer, but then better than I do about the Rangers, about how they progressed since the letter came out.
Yeah, they made it unfair for everybody, right? Like they did it so quickly because they got so fucking lucky 100 times, and every team's like, we could do this quickly. Like, no, you have to get a ton of luck.
Yeah, you have to, and look at Edmonton. I mean, my goodness,
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the level of frustration I can't even compare it to anything else we deal with down here. So the Ducks, there is a lot of luck. There is a lot of luck, and like a player like Jamie Drysdale, he's going to be out essentially for the rest of the season. So what does that do to his development at 20? It sets him back a year. So if that doesn't happen, he keeps going along and improving, developing, whatnot, and they're ahead. So he'll be back. Even he's not going to be back to zero, but he's going to be back to quite a bit from where he was.
Lisa, I have one more question for you before we get into our FMK, and I'm going to put you on the spot, okay?
Hearing me, by the way, I'm freaking out about that.
So we have fun here.
Lost my Wi-Fi connection, sorry.
Yeah, now you can't use that excuse. I want to know, what is your favorite story you've ever written of all time, and why?
Of all time? Wow, that is of all time, that's really, really hard.
Sorry.
Yeah, well, maybe The Athletic. There's a player named Gene Carr who found out he had a daughter that he didn't know about. So I mean, there's some recency bias. So and I wrote it with Eric Duhacek, and we had a 3-hour interview with Gene at the old hangout in the Valley, and it was really old school LA. And then I'd met the daughter in Madison, and we had a long dinner in an Italian restaurant, and we're still pretty friendly to this day. So that's the kind of story I like to do.
I remember that. That was like the most captivating story I've ever read. Wasn't there something with the Eagles in there too?
Oh yeah, he used to hang out with the Eagles.
Yeah.
And I know who knows about these stories, and he was admittedly, partying hard with these guys. So it's like, you wonder about it was fascinating. And I think about that. I wonder if that goes on now, and I don't think so. where you've got these players hanging out with major entertainment celebrities on a regular basis. But he was incredible, and his daughter's an amazing woman. She's in the health field in Madison, and was involved in taking care of people during COVID. So she's an amazing woman.
We'll have to link to that story for sure.
Absolutely. Lisa, before I'm going to we'll string this out a little bit longer because I have one last question. Selfishly, I remember when I was just starting out, like barely even legitimately considered a writer, and you were like the first legitimate writer, let alone female writer, to reach out to me. And you've always just been so supportive and so amazing. And I feel like everyone on this call, we all get asked all the time, what should a woman who wants to be in sports do? And often we can't be real about that. So I'm just wondering if, we know that it takes a little bit of luck, it takes hard work, but you've been so supportive to women in this industry. Do you have guidelines or suggestions or words of encouragement for any young woman or any woman of any age who wants to get into this industry?
It used to be, if I was asked this question maybe 10, 15 years ago, I would probably fall back on, internships, do the internships at, newspapers. But that has really changed. And, so I think, all three of you on the call have taken, different and successful paths. So there's like no one real way to do it. But I was reading a story about a woman on Twitter I think her name's Molly Fast. Molly, I think, yeah, and she's really amassed this big Twitter following, and now she writes for Vanity Fair and The Atlantic, and she's done it in a different way, where she's sort of kind of used social media as a platform to get her name out there. So I think just be as visible as possible. Take every opportunity you can. Go on podcasts, get your camera to work. I think there's just a lot of different ways to do it these days. Not just one way, but if you do happen to get offered an internship at a newspaper, take it. It's a great training ground. I mean, going out and covering high school football and anything. It's just, there's no better training than those sort of things.
Outstanding. All right, Lisa, it's time. Are you ready?
No.
Yes.
I'm terrified.
Okay, should we have one of us sample first?
That's exactly what I was.
Okay.
That's exactly what I was going to do, Shayna. Reading my mind. Okay, so Sarah, we're going to have you go first as our FMK role model. Are you ready, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So we end every episode with our very favorite game, and that is Fuck, Marry, Kill. So in honor of our esteemed guest, our Fuck, Marry, Kill today gives a little bit of homage to Trevor Zegras. Sarah, Fuck, Marry, Kill, the Michigan, Bar Down, or Between the Legs. Go.
Oh God. All right. I am killing Between the Legs because it's so often tried and failed, and it's like it doesn't count as part of the goal to me. I do love it, and it's fun. I love when Matthew Tkachuk does it specifically. That's always fun. But it's like it's always the highlight of like he almost did it, and then they don't do it. It's like when you're going for the Michigan, you're probably gonna do it, like, or you don't try it. So that's when you know you're ballsy. I'm gonna fuck Bar Down because like one of my favorite sounds in hockey of all time is just that clink. Like it's just so satisfying. It's the closest we get to a swish in the basketball hoop for my basketball fans out there. That one was shout to producer Jeremy. And I am going to marry the Michigan because it makes people lose their minds for some reason. It's so funny. Like, oh my God, like all the rules are going to have to, I love something, whatever it is, that'll make rules debate if they should be changed. And that happened with Svechnikov. I love that Svechnikov, like he was the guy to do it first in the NHL, and he's just so humble, and there was so much controversy around it and got the people talking.
Lisa, you ready, or do you want Shayna to go next?
I'll let Shayna go next.
Okay, Shayna, go.
Okay. This is making me rethink my answer because I do love the sound of like it hitting the bar, but I'm going to kill Bar Down. It's just a process of elimination. I am going to fuck Between the Legs. I think it's such a fun move to see. I like to see when it gets pulled off, someone like Matthew Tkachuk doing it or Hurdle doing it. I love, maybe even more than a Between the Legs goal, is the Between the Legs pass. I think it's like, it's so slick. I love to see it, even if it's not the primary assist, but you just see that somewhere in a play, and it's like, it's something that always catches my attention. I will marry the Michigan. I think, first of all, I love any offense that goes behind the net. I think that we need to utilize the area behind the net more because you're going to trick a goaltender. Second of all, I love the threat of it. I think it was Jonathan Huberdeau last year who it looked like he was threatening it. So you saw defenders kind of thinking, how are we going to change it now that he could do that? And he didn't end up doing it, whether he didn't pull it off, but it worked out for them. So I appreciate that. And I like the impact it's having on younger players. I love the clips of these kids trying it, girls, boys playing hockey. And they're like, we saw Trevor Zegras do it, and now we're going to do it too. And it's just like, it's going to spark more creativity. I think it's just anything good for the game that's going to be like a different threat, a different weapon to have in your arsenal. And now you see all these kids, I want to see what their version of the Michigan's going to be in 10 years. That shot that we're all like, holy shit, they're pulling this off.
Hey, Lisa?
Okay, I think I'm actually ready now.
Let's go.
I want to marry the Michigan. Absolutely. I want to marry the Michigan and run off to Desert Island. I was in the arena when Zegras the other day did it, and then it was called back for offsides, and I was surprisingly so disappointed. it was hurtful. So that's one. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what to do with the other two. We could kill Bar Down, but do we have the ability to pardon it?
That's what's so hard about this game. That's what's so hard about this game. We get either 3 really good things or 3 really bad things. It's hard to pick one, but
it is hard to pick one. And F between the legs. It's like, yeah, I that's let's just move forward. You can, try it and look supremely stupid when it doesn't work out. But like this is a very hard game. I wish I had prepped a little bit more. But I do want to give Bar Down a pardon or a reprieve off death row.
We like that. That might be the first ever pardon in Fuck, Marry, Kill. I am going to, simply to be different, I will fuck the Michigan just because it's fun, right? And no ties, no commitment. Let's just have some fun, and hope that something even more amazing comes out soon. We'll see. But I do love it. I just am going to fuck it to be contrarian. I'm going to marry Bar Down, just because it's so classic. It's so like pure hockeyness. And I love that. And I will kill Between the Legs because, Shayna, you inspired me. I like the Between the Legs pass more than I like the Between the Legs goal. That's just me. I feel like I feel like too many people try the Between the Legs goal and fail, and it screws up a perfectly good scoring chance. So sometimes let's just go for the scoring chance, please.
And then the flaw with the pass is if the scorer can't finish, then like no one cares about nice passes that don't end up in goals, which infuriates me because you can have a gorgeous goal that has a shitty pass to lead up to it, and that's fine. Like, we need to respect the passing a little bit more.
100%. Well, Lisa, we are so honored that you joined us. We, of course, encourage all of our listeners to follow you on social. You're at Real Lisa on Twitter, as long as Twitter's still around. Let our listeners know where else they can find your work and where else they can hear from you and learn from you every day.
Well, thanks for having me, and I hope I can come on again. And I wanted to ask Sarah about the style rankings, and I was wondering if she's ever going to include sports writers.
Oh,
you know what? You would be at the top of the list. I can tell you that right now.
Oh, you haven't seen me lately.
Maybe I'll do a special edition.
You haven't seen the pandemic sweat bottoms.
Oh no, stop it. I'm sure you're still as fabulous as ever.
Well, thanks again for having me on. Yeah, I'm at the Orange County Register and, a bunch of other papers in the region. And and Twitter, as long as it's still around.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. And again, all of our listeners, if you aren't already, follow us at 2_much_man. Check us out on our website, the TooManyMenPod.com. Buy our merch. It's beautiful. It's amazing. We love it. And until next time, do your part to make sure hockey is for everyone and be good to one another.